Texas for another 2 years. Basically, my grandparents, for the most part, raised me. Grandpa served in the Navy, and my then he worked over at McCormick for the rest of his career, and my grandma was working as a payroll specialist at the school district. So kind of came from a broken family, though. Obviously, grandparents being at the original part of my life, and then later on, we reconnected when I was about 16, after my dad had decided to take me away for about a decade. So that was like a really interesting time. Definitely a lot to learn and grow from, and a lot of retrospects. And I think the hardest thing about like my 20s in general has been this period of learning grace for yourself for some of the things that you've been influenced or honestly just when you're around such toxicity at times, it becomes so normal. And I think that's something where being a person has like a lot of accountability and a lot of, there's pride there too. And I try to keep integrity in a lot of the things I do, but, recognizing where, hey, you were wrong, these things you may have felt like 100% on something, but like you're pretty incorrect. So I think that's been one of the biggest things about this whole 20s period. At 21, I opened up my own business, learn the trials and errors of that, saw where a lot of my mistakes were, saw where a lot of, and I do see where you know, there was a lot of promise and success for that. I do have a 10-year-old son. He lives down in Fresno with the mother. So, being said, that has been one of the, when you're 19, 20, that's hard. If anybody has had a kid at that time, it's hard. Um, and, getting through that. But now I see it as my saving grace as far as, my return to higher education. Right now, I'm working on just got my accounting degree in business administration. But I realized that business administration is kind of vague. Like it doesn't really, like what does it really say at the end of the day? So I started strengthening and I'm getting an associate's in accounting as well, so which I'm finishing up this semester, and then I'm planning to transfer to Chico State and get some full time employment currently at this point in a career related field. So one of my big things that I'm considering right now, I just was down at the SSCCC for the State Community Colleges of California. Had a wonderful experience, met Yogi. Also got involved in the Veterans Caucus, Latinx, such things as that. And, I'm looking forward to seeing if I cannot uh, apply as an officer and, serve our country and better serve both my community, my son, and this great nation that we live in, and the great state of California, despite what some people may say.
So Garrett, um you have been around a little bit. You
Mhm,
are as you mentioned, so SSCCC, Student Senate of California Community Colleges, we just
mhm.
had what is called General Assembly, and that's where we had the pleasure of really connecting and getting to know each other. Which, by the way, you're kicking my butt at chess. I'm not really happy with that. Uh, or I should say, I'm letting you win, but it's okay.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
Student Senate of California Community Colleges has, at least for me, and I want to hear your perspective,
Mhm.
has given me a platform to advocate for the underrepresented communities, right? Including
100%.
the veteran community, which, as everybody knows, I'm extremely passionate about. Um, Being one and living all of that, and which allowed for us to have this conversation ourselves, right?
Mhm,
You reached out and he's like, "Hey, why why should I join, or how should I join? And is it possible, right?" And
mhm,
my immediate answer is like, "Yeah, let's do it." I loved everything that the military had to offer me, but I also saw it from the perspective of what positive things are there, right? Not the let me complain about all the negative things, and
mhm,
then because that's not my style for one. But at the same time, it it does morph your perspective, right?
mhm.
Um, and I think that's something that we'll get more in depth too. Now, for everybody in the audience out there, Garrett is trying to decide what branch he should join, right? And as all of us service members that have already gone through this, right, they will tell you Uh, Depending on what you want to do, is the branch that you want to choose, right? Uh, as we jokingly say, the chair force, right? If you just want to hang out, kick back, and have a five-star gourmet cuisine as your regular breakfast, then obviously the Air Force is the best thing. We don't know and or have enough information about the Space Force, but I hear nothing but great things. And then you go into the Navy, right? So the Navy is literally all over the world. Um, and if you're not there, you have the ocean, which is what, the carriers and all the other ships are for,
Hmm.
right? And then you have the Army, which is to support and augment combat fields. And then you have the Marine Corps, right? And the Marine Corps is the first ones to go in, last ones to come out. Uh, Specialized training for, combat, and there's a lot of pride, right, in the Marine Corps. There is a lot of pride, and there's a lot of training, specialized training that you go through. But as you mentioned, you want to go more into the law field and into the administrative side of the house, right? So
Correct.
we would call it more like an admin role.
Hmm.
And with an admin role, you have um, different different exposure to different things, right? You see,
Hmm.
obviously, you see the world through a different lens,
Hmm.
because you're not there outside in the frozen, whatever, trying to fix a jet, or out there primarily in the cold, right? You're behind
Hmm.
trying to figure out administrative side. So it does change things. Um, so what are some of the thoughts that have come up with you so far, or
Um, I, s-
questions?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose as far as like I had shared when we were in our breakout and for the Veterans Caucus that like my grandpa at the age of I think it was 79 and by the pestering of another vet had finally went in, got his VA benefits, talked to the attorneys, got the class action suit, stuff like that. So I've seen like where people can have the downfall. I think that my grandpa obviously he answered the call, when the draft came during the Vietnam War, and that's a wonderful thing. I even told Yogi before this, the one thing stopping me from the military was a little bit of a lack of response to authority at a certain point in my life. But that's we gotten past that. So um, the mountain has been summited. So as far as I feel like especially getting back into higher education, I find myself with more friends who are veterans in that experience, and I see how, you know, I mean, not to brag, but the fact that they're my friends, I think I have some cool friends. And it's a different caliber of individuals, like even you, Yogi, all the things that you do, it's inspiring. I have my friend Preet, who was in the Navy. He made some big changes in some of the policies because of his religion, being able to have the head attire on whatnot in there. So I thought that was really influential. As far as the law degree, I've seen a lot of personal injustice in my life. My biological father was incredibly abusive, and be it said, my mother was, strung out on drugs. Primarily, I mean, obviously that runs in the family, but he put her through. He put her through quite the race, with court and all that jazz, and you know, I grew up in this environment where, even when I was playing rugby or football or hockey, he'd be like, oh, pick the person you're like, tackling or checking or whatever, like picture your biological mom. So it was like this super abusive environment. And then my stepmom was in the reserves. Her dad was a Green Beret, served 3 tours in Vietnam. So we became pretty close. Obviously, he didn't talk a lot about like what had happened there, but it kind of showed even like with the PTSD or some of those little family stories that you hear. So I hear the downsides, and honestly, I want to be a supportive character. Like I know I'm blessed eternally for to even be here, like in this moment, and to not be, somewhere, well, to even be breathing, quite frankly. But I would like to, and I feel this internal obligation to give back to the community, to our society, and to be not only a steward of like the land itself, but of the people who live within it. So for me, I feel like joining the military, in whatever branch, that may see fit, would be incredibly influential for me. As an attorney, a future attorney, I would like to, get my not only my CPA licensure so that I have a really sound knowledge of business and everything like that to make things run. Because I mean, ideas are great. I love ideas, and also as I've known through SSCCC, I'm not the treasurer for my region, but I am the treasurer for my school, and working with like $310,000 budget, working with mock budgets and things like that. I see how that's really how ideas become actuality. Like there's all that. If there's no money, if there's no funding, then nothing's happened. So, um,
Yes.
so having an understanding of that, and then also to learn how our I feel personally, even if I was to not join the service, like to become an attorney would be my one way to be like, oh, I am an American citizen. Like I know the law like the back of my hand. Like, and
Hmm.
for those who don't, because I've grown up, I grew up in poverty. Like now, it's not, that's not the case. And I'm blessed to not have basic needs in question all the time. But like that was not the situation 10 years of my life. That was not the scenario. I had attended over 14 different schools from K to 12 because, I've been reported to CPS so many times, for various things. And, back then it would be like, what did you tell them? Like I get, ridiculed and interrogated, and I would just be like, oh, and it's crazy. It was like, talk about delusional. It really, it fostered this very, uh, self-destructive mechanism, because if you're not living with truth and honesty, like what are you living with? So, and for me that tears me apart. So I feel like I'm enjoying the accounting field, because I feel like despite what your morals are, despite what your, I mean, I believe there should be a general level of ethics there. But like, and then there's Enron and et cetera and Sam Friedman. But like, I do like the fact that despite however we approach it personality wise, like there's an end goal. Like we want things to balance, we want things to be in order. Like, and I do feel like the military engages in that as well. And a lot of structure that I know personally I didn't get to receive in my upbringing. I was very much survival mode, all the time. So, with and that story is so oversaid, and the thing that I find more about sharing it, it's not rare at all. And that's like, you could look at it like, oh, that's sad, but like, no, it's empowering. And like, we can all, be in whatever position we want to be, and ever more gifted and influential in that position, because all of those tribulations happen. So, really, I'm trying to become even more adaptable, more like the rest of individuals who have sacrificed something bigger than themselves. I think that's a beautiful thing.
And so let's shift a little bit, right? So let's talk a little bit about your history, right?
Hmm.
So you are currently 31.
I'll be
Um,
31 on the 30th.
oh, my bad, my bad, my bad. You're
Yes,
still
yeah,
30.
yeah,
Ah,
yeah,
my
yeah,
bad.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, so and then you decided you own a couple businesses, you started a couple your own, and then you work for multiple businesses, different what is it called? Different demographics and different fields.
Yeah, from bussing tables to owning a business, and in between, yeah,
And now
landscaping.
you chose to come back to school. So
Hmm.
you're a non-traditional student.
Hmm.
Why did you choose now to come back to school?
Back to the authority thing. There was one point where I was a 4.0 student, but what happened? It was in Texas. I remember distinctly. I got my first D, and to me that wasn't acceptable. But it crushed me, man. Like it crushed me, and then to not have the I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know how to, asking for help was totally frowned upon. Like asking for help would get my, biological father and my, stepmom caught, or, caught up in all the crud that they were involved in. So, that took a long time for me to do that. But what I recognize now throughout time, throughout starting at 21, where I did have a successful, 750K revenue a year type business, that once that's over or whatnot, and that's a total sacrifice. That's 365 days a year. That's like you're sending nice checks to your son, but you're not there for your son. You know what I mean? You're not physically there. You're just financially, and that's cool and all. Do what you can, but that's not the life at this point that I'm ready to lead. So it would be a lot because I would be the first generation with a 4-year degree. In general, I'd be the only one with a white collar job. And that's something that, because my son is, I like, even until the SSCCC, I never saw myself as a, person of color other than my last name, where I have had, people say I was part of the cartel when I bought some property out here in Town, but it's like Garrett Fernandez, and he's like 22. So, oh, what is he doing out here? And it's like, I've had the county on my property, I've had bulldozers, I've had cranes all on there, and then they're like, oh, you move 5 cubic yards of dirt without a permit. I mean, we're gonna red tag you. And I'm like, what the heck? And it's like, these little things where, um, if you don't suit the bill and your last name is something else on paper, like, it doesn't, people don't even need to see you to profile you. And my son, obviously, without a question, is Latino, and I want to make sure it's a better world for him, uh, primarily, and that's my goal. And to also, not because, oh, you need to be a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, or whatever, society puts up here, but no, just that you can actually see that. Because even my friend Samuel Seja, he was telling me, like, and he's going for his medical school, and he's done some really great internships. And I've met him through student government, but he had mentioned how when we were at the last Triple C conference, and it's like there were no Latino males or females up there doing the speaking. They were serving us. They were, and even at the
Yeah,
last one, and it's
yeah,
kind of like, I mean, you got all this diversity and this empowerment, and it's like, well, who's the one, like, and I don't know. It's hard. That one is hard for me to swallow. And it's not. I'm not saying that in the least bit that those are unsavory or not respectable careers or not. But like, it is kind of like a whoa, you know what I mean? And I mean,
right,
said, I was like, yeah, even me growing up, even the drug addicts, like when they come talk to your school and they're like, hey, change your life. It's like, well, what are they? They're white as heck. It's like, like, let's show a little bit of like who we are as California, which is never innately um Caucasian or whatever you want to describe that as.
right.
So that would be my big purveyor for me, is to change that, and to empower people, and have the tools, because at the end of the day, what do people always say? Get an attorney, right? Well, hey, I am one. So let's go from there. um and if I don't have the expertise in it, then I'm sure I have one of my friends who has the expertise. And there's always time for a social cause. And that's the one thing I thought was beautiful, after, especially in sales, doing the door-to-door sales, knocking like over 6,000 doors within like a 6-month time period, especially in rural NorCal, where things get pretty dicey. I'm lucky I look and present myself the way I do, because I've seen it from the other hand. Even like an African American veteran came out here from Arizona, had great speaker. I loved his cadence. You know what I mean? He's able to like hold that authority with the words and the space that he created. Because some of us are like little like gappers, and creating that space to create the dialogue and ask the questions to the homeowner. And that was
Hmm.
another thing too, is I never felt the right to ask people personal questions until having that job. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, you plan to add on to your house, like these little like vague ways to figure out what's your bill like, et cetera, et cetera. So that experience was really good. I actually heard a lot of very personal stories that I'll carry with me for the rest of my life through that experience. And I have some really great friends from it. I thought I did well in it, but the thing is, with that type of industry where it's commission only, for at
Yeah,
least some of the
it's
jobs,
it's
like,
very difficult.
yeah, at Christmas you think you have 20K in the bank, and then it's like, oh, canceled, delayed. And it's like, oh
Yeah,
man, I'm like, no.
I
So
do. I do want to highlight something that you mentioned, and I want to
yeah.
go back to it a little bit, right? So you were talking about the experience at, General Assembly and
Mhm.
um, possibly Advocacy Academy,
I think, yeah.
and it's funny because looking at it from a different lens, right? Um, I mingled and made friends with all of the staff, right?
Hmm.
Because I speak Spanish, right?
Yeah.
And when as I spoke Spanish and I was talking to them, it was just a different experience. I mean, I was just bullshitting with them and I made them feel seen,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when I went up to the mic and I shared part of my story, whatever it is, Advocacy Academy and at General Assembly, both of them, I had some of the staff reach back out to me and they're like, "Oh, that's a beautiful speech, bro." Obviously in Spanish and things like that. And
Mm-hmm.
then we just kept on bullshitting. But to me, it was more empowering because I wasn't just getting it from the student and or from the
Mm-hmm.
staff or from whatever, but I was getting it from the people. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
The people that
Yeah.
had absolutely zero purpose of being there, right? To
Yeah.
tell me something, right? Because I'm not,
Yeah.
they're not sucking up or anything. I'm not gonna pay their
Yeah.
bills or anything like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But when they reached out to me and they said, "Hey, I really enjoyed that speech," and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh shit!" Like that touches me more, even more, more
Yeah. Yeah.
deeply.
It was those fifty
So
dollar tips you were given.
no, but it does highlight something, right?
Yeah.
And you mentioned it. Here in California, especially Southern California, our demographic is very high, right? And we should be able to honor the work and the things that everybody else is doing and the effort that everybody else is putting in. But
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times they go unseen and unnoticed. And for whenever they're seen and noticed, is like, wow, this is crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I really do love that. Now, so let's talk. We talked a little bit about your history. We
Mm-hmm.
talked about where you want to go, and
Mm-hmm.
what made you think about wanting to join the military?
As far as that, honestly, it's something that I've always wanted to do, even younger. I think that authority in general kind of never worked immediately in my favor because I was always doing my own thing, and just the environment I was raised in. Now I going back to higher education. I mean, it's not like you just get straight A's out of the get go. Like I've had to suffer my 1B, and that one did hurt. But you know what that taught me was I made changes because it was macroeconomics. It was on one of the more very very studious professor, but I was online thinking, all this confidence and like, yeah, I got this going. But then I was like, oh, you got like a C on this test. And it's like, dang. So I changed it up to the in person, got, straight A's for the rest of the thing. Nonetheless, my grade finished at a high B. But I think what pushed me to want to and feel confident in joining the military is that it's something I know I am capable of doing. It's without a question. I know I have the dedication. I've worked on type 1 and type 2 incidents as like the AV incident management and things like that, which was a cool. Um, I think feel like preemptive look at like what it feels like to be stationed somewhere for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatnot and be living there like on the main site. I also have a lot of respect for individuals who not only are they working in administration or administrative role or doing this or that, like your decisions, like a big thing on the fires and things like that is that complacency kills. And while our lives are like a blink of an eye, there is a lot of years to I've seen them pass when you're not doing much, and I've seen them fly by when you are doing a ton. So for me, I feel like that's just the next step. If I'm able to gain admittance, the next step for me to be a even more personable individual, connect with others, and make a difference. So I don't think there's really anything that offers that type of like diverse exposure to a variety of people's backgrounds. Like I've done pretty well for myself as far as connecting with people, especially like the door to door experience. Because I've lived in Wyoming, Texas, which are completely different demographics. Like over there, in Wyoming, when I was 13, 12, like I got death threats, like saying that I should, my what I'm not gonna say the word, but like
Right,
calling me
right,
out for being Japanese, calling me out for being Latino, and saying that I should kill myself and doing all this, and that was an interesting moment, and then obviously like you know the F word too, just so much hatred. But then again, like I mean, I was 12, so things happen. I hope it's a little bit better of a world today. But if it's not, then I'm here to try and be that voice that I feel like is sometimes easier heard than some other individuals. I think it was put well that like even my advisor, he was like, well, look at the board of trustees at our school. Like, it is all Caucasian males, and they are older. And quite frankly, they probably will listen to someone that looks more so like me or, lighter complected than someone who, it's the immediate, like, oh, not like us kind of thing to some extent. So I want to use that privilege and use yeah, exactly what it is, privilege to make better of it and not just continue to institutionalize this like systematic like oppressive type thing that's been continuously going, because I've seen a lot of my friends, even the one time I had one of my friends who was Hawaiian, like I was at this a nicer neighborhood. I'm driving my little Honda Accord going down, and I get pulled over, and he's just like kind of harassing us. And then he's like looking at my ID. He's like, "That's so you say you live down here, but this says Groveland or whatever I was living at the time." I was like, "Yeah," and I changed it with the DMV. Like I just did that the other day. Writes me a ticket, for not having the proper
No.
physical address on my thing, and I go to the DMV and I'm like, yeah, I just got a ticket for this. I think it's kind of wild. They're like, you got a ticket for this? Like they're like, well, we checked your registry. Like you're changed in here. You did it. You just don't have the physical, print. And they're like,
Yeah.
she summed it up with he must have just been bored. But you know what I mean. That wasn't what it is. Like you didn't think I could afford to live in this area or I belonged here, and I get
Right.
that. Like I get the assumption. But I think the military has long been a institution that honors your efforts, honors your actions, honors your dutifulness or your duty, and it's something that's broken those barriers long before any other, even our government or administrative offices and things like that, executive office, like the barriers have long been broken in the branches before they have anywhere else. So, and I think that comes down to people working together as a team. Like I said, I played rugby, I played hockey, I played football, water polo. So I've always been in team sports, especially rugby. Like that's, to me, that's the best. There's nothing like your rugby mates. I don't play anymore because I like my knees not hurting and my
You don't like to get, slammed on the ground?
yeah, no, no,
Which,
no,
for the
yeah.
record, I want to take a quick pause. So Ryan Logan,
Mhm,
he's one of my great friends.
mhm.
If we have an opportunity, I want to bring him on. He's driving to his office, but one, he was curious to see if this was really live, and it
Uh-huh.
really is. For everybody that's running into this live stream, it really is live. And then two, so Ryan Logan just retired, uh, and I was actually very conflicted because I was supposed to be at his retirement ceremony, being the master of ceremonies,
Mhm.
and then we had the SSCCC event, where, as you already know, I had a lot going on,
Mhm.
including the what is it called? The Veteran Caucus, the
Mhm.
resolutions, including the well, now I am Regional Affairs Director for next year, the incumbent Regional Affairs Director, right? Which is
Yeah.
intense. But I'm really happy with that. But I would love to bring Ryan on if we have an opportunity, because Ryan is one of a kind of guy. Um, he's also a Navy chief, just like me, but his perspective is more academic,
Mhm.
right? And he's actually, with his retirement, he already started teaching. So I would like to see and hear some advice from his perspective shared onto you. What do you think?
I'm down. Yeah, down.
Heck yeah. So I'll send him the invitation, and if he's able to join, then he'll join us and we'll bring him on.
Okay.
And then we'll carry on this conversation. But
All right. This
no,
cat's a bit. I'll be right 1 second.
okay. For everyone that's watching, I mean, we're here with who's just joining us. We're here with Garrett Fernandez, college student currently thinking about joining the military. And if you have any advice or any questions for him that he should be thinking of, please put them in the chat, and let us know what and how we can improve, this kind of thing. And we would love to, if you do choose to take that route, we want to, share your journey and your experience, right, from the beginning
Hmm.
to end,
Hmm.
because this also is showing your perspective now, right,
Hmm.
before the military, and then you're gonna have a different perspective while you go through basic training, and once you come out, and you're gonna have an absolutely different perspective, and as you go forward, things are going to change, right?
Hmm.
And it happens to all of us, regardless of why you decide to join, regardless of why you're doing all these things. Um, but it really is a different perspective, and something that I've noticed, right? We don't want to have the warrior class. We don't want to have the. Speaking of the devil, here is Ryan Logan, right?
Yeah, Ryan.
Ryan Logan,
What's
meet
up?
Garrett Fernandez.
Hey, how you
Uh,
doing,
but Ryan, so I was telling Garrett, I wanted to hear your perspective and your wisdom onto why Garrett should or should not join the military.
man? I think in almost all cases, it's a should. Um, there are definitely people that probably don't belong in the military, but I think
Hmm.
if you qualify, if you qualify, I think it's one of the most rewarding careers, even if it's one term. It's one of the
Hmm.
most rewarding things that you can do with your life. You're going to see things that no one else gets to see. You're going to meet people that no one else gets to meet. You're going to get to definitely do things that nobody else gets to do. And even on the worst days, when you're looking at something, you're like, this is terrible. But then you just look around, and you're like, but nobody else gets to do this or see this. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
one thing that I remember specifically is I spent all night working on a radar in the back of a plane on the flight deck. And I came out all sweaty and nasty, and my clothes stunk because the laundry is terrible on the ship. And I had like grease and dirt all over me, and I'm an electronics technician. I'm not supposed to get greasy or dirty.
Hmm.
Um, but I got my tool pouch slung over my chest, and I look out, and I'm just seeing like the first lights of morning and stuff coming up over the horizon. You can't see
Oh.
anything else. Um, and then for that, just that second, like everything was worth it. And
Hmm.
um, I just realized in that moment, like, hey, I could be sitting here in my feelings about what I just did, but other people don't get to do that. So, um, yeah, man. If you qualify, I think it's always a should, even if you don't stay forever.
Hmm.
I think it's a should.
Awesome.
And then now that you said it's a should, we're talking about what branch and why. What are your perspectives on what branch and why?
Well, I'm completely biased. I mean, you can see I got a ship in my background. So, what are you thinking of, man? Before we go into that, I mean, I was a recruiter for a little bit, so
Hmm.
it sounds like you have some sales experience. You'll probably pick up on some things when I talk. But what are you thinking about? What's important to you before I try and sell you? Because if it's up to me, I'm just going to tell you go Navy.
Yeah, I
But
mean that was when I talked to Yogi. That was my grandpa served in the Navy. He actually had a similar story to what you just expressed about being and looking outside and seeing just the horizon and just this vastness. And I think that's a very monumental and
yeah,
obviously something you're going to carry with you the entire life and be able to share with your son, your grandkids, all that.
for sure.
But for me, my son, grandkids if they happen. But that would be the biggest purveyor for me is to. Find myself in something that he can either if it's just the GI Bill and providing him with college. I told Yogi prior to this, my best friend Claudia, her father was an officer, a linguist, and he was super absent, emotionally, physically, all those. But you know
Right.
what? He got her a USC education paid for, granted with her own academic merit that she
Yeah.
she had. But nonetheless, if I can do that, that would be amazing. My first choice would have been, yeah, probably like Air Force or Navy. Yogi brought up Space Force.
Hmm.
I wasn't sure about the longevity of that in general. I think it's the unknown in general. Um, not sure if you know, yeah, but be it said, with that environment, like, what are you going to be exposed to while it's unknown? Like, maybe the Space Force, not
Yeah,
maybe. I'm sure there's a ton of things there that are a once in a lifetime or only a very
yeah,
niche
absolutely.
experience. And
Mhm.
that to me, like I said, life's in a blink of an eye. But I'm trying to gather as much experience, be able to relate to the most amount of people as possible so that I can actually have, form my opinions better because, I'm definitely one to believe in, I believe in everyone's opinion to an extent, but I believe you should have an educated opinion. Like, I don't need to open my mouth just because I have a feeling about something. Like, I'd rather converse with other people, hear them out, observe for a bit before I just, become belligerent on some idea because it, like, even if it gets an applause. So,
No, yeah, for
I,
sure. That's
yeah.
great.
I do feel like the military, and to be more disciplined too. Honestly, like, I'll point out a flaw, like, I could be more disciplined. My bed could be made better. I mean, little things like that.
Yeah. All
So,
right.
like, yeah, I think there's something, especially growing up too, like in that environment that didn't ever really have like the parental figure kind of thing. I
Okay.
think that would be something that I could learn a lot from the experience, and I know that I have the ability to relate with people and communicate well. So
For sure.
I'd just like to enhance that.
Yeah. So I think you have a very broad perspective. I think already. I don't know how old you are, but
30, yeah.
oh yeah, you're doing great, man.
Thanks.
One thing I will tell you about any branch is that those fun moments, those beautiful moments, are not going to just come to
Yeah,
you. You do have to look for them,
yeah.
and there's a lot. There's a lot in the way sometimes, and your average person a lot of times doesn't see those things, and unfortunately,
Hmm.
like, your younger guys a lot of times don't see them, and they compile on other moments that they don't see and other moments that they don't see, and then they end up choosing to get out thinking that they've experienced nothing, and then later they regret it because they're like, oh
Hmm.
wait, this is what I remember what I used to have now all of a sudden, and it's all in this positive light because it's not still fresh, it's not still sourced.
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
like Yogi's one of my best friends from the military, but Yogi and I, like, we got off to a rocky start. Yogi Yogi used to jump up on the back of my aircraft and yell at me for things, like, and he was always there, like the little, like, imp that shows up on your shoulder when you're doing something that you're not supposed to do, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I didn't even know Yogi that well, so I'm like, why are you even bothering me, dude?
Yeah.
Um, but to be honest with you, like, there's such a like a value in that because, like,
Hmm.
you accountability. We don't think of accountability as a positive thing.
Hmm.
Um, but in the Navy, and I can speak to the Navy. I know in the other branches, it's the same.
Hmm.
Um, but you're held to an accountability standard that forces you to become the best version of yourself as long as you
Hmm.
listen.
Hmm.
And a lot of times we don't appreciate that accountability enough. So if you're
Hmm.
looking to increase your discipline, I'd say, yeah, do it because
Hmm.
someone's always going to be unhappy with your performance to some level.
Yeah, yeah.
And you do need to learn to have thick skin a little bit, but like, I think it's Epictetus said, if someone says something evil about me and it's true, then fix it. And if it's not, then just laugh. And then we
Yeah.
really sort of learn that intuitively in the military because you learn to take that feedback. And if you can do something about it, then you do it. If you don't, you just whatever, dude.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I whatever dude Yogi quite a few times, but I just felt like I just was missing resources. But at the
Yeah.
same time, like, if he hadn't been the guy that was constantly like straight up nagging me about it, I
Hmm.
might have become even lazier and cared about it less.
Yeah.
Um, you respond to that level of accountability and you develop an appreciation for the discipline, and you start to like try and really take that on board and make yourself the best version of yourself. Um, as far as like the Space Force longevity and stuff, what I'd like to see, I don't know if it'll happen, but I'd really like to see that become like the technical hub for everything where
Hmm.
all and honestly, I think it would be great if we could even lower certain standards that we have in the military for the Space Force, because these guys are very technical jobs, like your guys with autism, your guys with ADD,
Mm-hmm.
your guys that can't pass a physical readiness test
Mm-hmm.
might be fantastic in those jobs.
Yeah.
I'd really love to see them open it up to that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now, I've heard very mixed reviews about Army. I've worked with guys in special ops that love it. I've worked with guys that are Rangers that love it.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked with parents that didn't want their kids to be in the Army because they felt like they were sort of abandoned
Mm-hmm.
as far as people goes. I can tell you in the Navy, it's kind of mixed. You'll have some really great leaders and you have some that aren't. Um, but you seem to have like the ability to overcome, from what I've heard you talk about just this morning,
Mm-hmm.
to look past, what we call in recruiting the need, and find that need behind the need,
Mm-hmm.
like what's really driving the situation, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that you get to that. And I don't think that no matter what branch you choose, you'll probably have an issue with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would gently put in a nice plug for the Navy because it's done me well for 22 years.
Yeah.
I just did my retirement. I have no regrets.
Yeah.
Honestly, I wish that my body and everything would hold up a little bit longer so I could do this more.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I've loved every minute of it. As far as like the family, like you have a choice whether you want to be absent or not, even though there's certain absences that you don't get a choice about. But what we do control is we control the time that we're here, and
Mm-hmm.
we control that narrative with our children and with our families. And they're going to know what type of person you are when you come home,
Mm-hmm.
and when you have to leave, whether you wanted to leave or whether you didn't want to leave. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's people that are looking for that sort of break from the family, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's people that go because they have to, and your
Mm-hmm.
family will see that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, I
yeah.
don't see. Just looking at the housing market recently, I'm like, there's no way I'm buying a house. So,
Oh yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it's well, and you guys are in Southern California, right?
I'm in NorCal
Oh,
myself, but
okay.
yeah, California in
Yeah,
general,
anywhere
it's
in
like,
California seems like ridiculous to me right
yeah,
now. I'm in
yeah,
Tampa right now, and I'm like, no, we're not buying a house here. It's not happening.
no, yeah, okay, okay,
It's not happening.
yeah. Hey, and I appreciate your story, Ryan. Just want to say
Sure.
thank you for your service, and
Oh
congrats
yeah,
on
man.
your
I
retirement.
enjoyed it. I'm happy to do it. So I've loved every minute of it. So
That's great to
um,
hear.
no need to thank me. If you're interested in it, if you ever want any advice or anything, Yogi knows how to get in touch with me. You can
Sweet.
find me on LinkedIn. Um, Yogi, you can give him my number if you need to after this. It's fine. Just don't do it on the internet, please.
Why not? Where's the fun in that?
But
A lot of
yeah,
fun
I'm
people on
more
here.
than happy to help any way I can, even if you choose another service. But I mean, I'd love to see more people in the Navy, especially people with good head on their shoulders.
Hmm.
Are you looking at going officer? It sounds like, right?
Yeah, yeah. I basically have
Yeah.
a year or
You
so
you
left.
talk like an officer, so that's why I was wondering. But, yeah, am I wrong, Yogi?
No, not at all.
Yeah, he talks like an officer. So just with that as an officer, just take that responsibility that you have to lead people very seriously,
Hmm.
and don't think that it means that you've arrived, but look to people to try and help you get better at it every day.
Hmm.
So
Now,
I
Ryan,
think that
from
you'll
your
do great things
perspective,
for people. What's that?
I said, from your perspective, what are your thoughts between reserves and active duty? Because that's something else that Garrett was curious
Yeah,
about.
I've had friends that have done both. I didn't know much about reserves until this tour. And I guess it really depends on what you want, because to me, in some respects, reserves is easier, but in other respects, reserves is harder because you're caught
Hmm.
with that dichotomy, that constant juxtaposition of I'm a military member, but I'm also a civilian. Um,
Exactly.
and it's very hard to put those two very separate identities into one.
Hmm.
So it can be very positive, and I've seen people that are very good at it. And if you ever needed to, I would get you in touch with them.
Hmm.
Um, but to me, like it was easier to put all my stuff in one sock, as we say in the
Hmm.
Navy. And I was not set up like you when I joined the Navy. I sort of knew that I needed something. I had no idea what, and I just knew that I was not on the path that was working.
Hmm.
So for me, the full time gig was what I needed. I
Yeah.
needed something to be like, hey, just all right, just hold me, make sure I don't mess up,
Yeah.
and give me a paycheck, please, so that I can
Yeah.
not turn into a lackluster.
Hmm.
member of society, we'll say.
Yeah, yeah. A degenerate.
Yeah, degenerate. I was trying to think of how I was going to say that without using Navy lingo.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
What we call it, a shitbag.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I've had that phase, so yeah, it's
Yeah,
something. I think in having that too is something that really procures you to not want to do that, and having that glass ceiling or whatever it is
yeah,
or paper ceiling. It's like, you get just get stuck at this level if you're not willing to not only like increase your exterior skills but internally and keep, that's why I am in love with accountability. I'm in love with integrity, and I'm in love with showing up because those are the hardest things to do, I feel like.
for sure.
But they're the most meaningful, and then you make impactful relationships that'll last your lifetime.
Yeah,
Or you're able to recognize the ones that shouldn't last a lifetime, and
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and then you like as you go, like you sort of figure out what sort of traits do I want to carry on, what things do I want to make
hmm
part of my brand and my identity,
hmm
and what things do I want to just let go.
hmm
So you're
hmm
really, man, you get it as far as that goes. So I think that the sky's probably the limit for you as long as you just keep looking for wisdom and don't just assume that you have it.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
a lot of times you find it in the least likely places, like yogi.
hmm
I mean, goodness, man. Like,
Thanks, bro.
well, I'm just playing yogi. But hey, since I was on here last time and I was raving about it, I just want to let you know, if you get a chance, you should read the book "Surf When You Can" by retired Captain
Yes.
Billy,
What is it?
and it's going to be great if
What
you
was
haven't
it
heard
called?
it. It's called "Surf When You Can."
Yeah.
I did it on Audible. It took me like 6 hours, um, but it's fantastic. It's a lot of leadership advice for anybody, but especially for those interested in the naval service.
hmm
Um, yeah, I would recommend that book. It's really great.
Yeah, I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah.
And the author um has actually been through here a couple times.
Oh
I
man,
don't know if I've
I know it was going to be
yeah.
the first time. Last time I talked to you guys on here.
Yeah, so Brett Crosier has actually come and joined us. He has an amazing story. I do not want to take away from it. And he joined as an officer. Um, and he has I really great that's a great suggestion, Ryan, because it really does paint the military in a different light, right? And it allows you to have um our best position on how to do it,
Yeah,
but
he
most of all,
acknowledges the negatives and
enjoy.
still amplifies, pulls out the positives.
Hmm.
Right. And just like Ryan said, I mean, there's gonna be plenty of things that you can think and seem wrong, right? I
hmm
mean, just alone when you're getting separated from the entire world for, a month, 3 months, 6 months at a time, that changes things, right? Now you have technology that you're able to at least check your phone
hmm
and, keep with social media and all these things. I'm gonna tell you from my perspective, and I don't know if Ryan will, share his, but life was so much simpler when you could just unplug because you didn't have a choice, right? You
Yeah,
didn't have a choice. You went on deployment, and people wouldn't reply to you um, on email for a day, two, maybe three, maybe a week,
hmm
maybe a
hmm
month, right?
hmm
And even before that, it was, well, people are not replying to you unless there's a letter that goes through, right?
hmm
And just because you don't get a letter doesn't mean that they didn't write. It just means that it didn't make it to you, right?
Exactly.
Sometimes he literally got lost in the middle of. You're seeing the pallets go from one ship to the other, and then you see a pallet of stuff just land in the middle of the water, just papers and everything goes
yeah, yeah.
everywhere. You're like,
It's a bad day.
no,
It's a bad
that's
day.
my letter.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah,
you think.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, but Brett Crosier, he actually shares the good times, the bad times, and but draws a beautiful, beautiful perspective
hmm
on how to really enjoy life to the fullest, even when the times are rough.
hmm
Yeah,
hmm
yeah. Do your
Um,
to your communication piece, Yogi, for the amount of time, for the time period that I was in, I sort of experienced the full gamut of technology increases. And I can tell you, actually, there's a little bit more stress with connectivity because once you have it, you kind of expect it and you want it, and as soon as you don't have it, then it becomes a little bit more tough.
Mm-hmm.
When I first joined, I was in a relationship with my wife already, and we were writing letters, writing letters. I still have a whole mesh knit bag full of letters that we wrote. And then I go to my first school, and I would I would play the game where I'd call. I forget how I did it, but I'd call and like we'd use like a phone card or something, and I get like 15 to 30 minutes at a time, and it was like cheap that way. But I didn't have a
Mm-hmm.
cell phone, and then cell phones happened, and then but when you go out to sea, like there's pretty much no connectivity, so you're waiting for that email. Maybe you're in what we call River City, which is where they shut it down for security purposes, or maybe stuff just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I mean, yeah, there's. I will say that like there were times when we had to pay like 50 cents a minute to use a satellite phone call system on the thing, and um, I would wait as long as I could to start calling because I knew that it was going to start to like drive at me like I want to call more, I want to call more, I want to
Yeah,
call
yeah, yeah,
more.
yeah.
So yeah, that's one of the biggest challenges I would say um, to your like your mental and emotional well being
Mm-hmm.
is finding that peace and that understanding. Like you're going to get times when you get partial bad news and you're
Mm-hmm.
sitting there thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've had calls while I've been out to sea, like where someone wasn't doing well, someone was in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, I was able to get back and see the person before they passed. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, I've had pets pass away while I've been deployed, and that's tough. I know
Mm-hmm.
it sounds superficial, but I mean,
No,
anyone
I
who really loves their
yeah,
pet, like that's a big deal.
yeah.
And it wasn't something that I saw coming when I left. So it's
Mm-hmm.
you get those sort of things. And what I will say is there are a lot of programs, a lot of resources that help us deal with that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But that's probably the hardest part is like having that semi connection to the world and
Mm-hmm.
realizing that um, you can't really do much about what's happening back at home while you're
Mm-hmm.
gone. There's a poem that we read when we retire called The Watch, and it sort of
Mm-hmm.
gets to the heart of that is that like, hey, when stuff's going on at home, you know that you're the guy and you need to be the guy because
Mm-hmm.
everyone's counting on you.
Mm-hmm.
So you sort of turn a blind eye to it a little bit and just,
Mm-hmm.
I hate to say it, but stuff it down a little bit
Yeah.
for the time being
Yeah.
because you know you have the watch.
Yeah.
And there's a really great sort of sense of responsibility to that, but it does hurt, and you got to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that you deal with it in a good way when you have
Mm-hmm.
the time to do that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's not easy. I don't know if you're gonna
Yeah.
tell you it's gonna be easy.
Yeah.
One of the hardest things I've ever done, but if I had to do it all over again, I might do it a little bit different, but I would definitely
Mm-hmm.
do it all over again.
Yeah. Now definitely for me, like I can I can affirm with that because like my grandparents who basically raised me been my parental figures, they're 84, 82. So we're getting up there. While, longevity does run in the family. I have a family member that's a 101. But
Yep.
Wow.
yeah, yeah, and they're kicking healthy. Honestly, it's my dog. I have a McNabb. Her name's Ryu, but she's 12 now, and like I look at the picture and she's got all the white hairs and
Yeah.
the just kind of like grayness going on. Like and the slower movement. And I would be heartbroken, to
Yeah.
be somewhere else with that. She was ill or we had to say goodbye finally, but. No, I feel like I have the head on my shoulders to realize, what it's worth, what it's providing, because, like I was telling Yogi earlier, if this can provide not only me with my higher education, law school, etc.,
Yep.
and then my son too, like, that's the bigger picture, and that's the future for me. So, um, I really do think that overall you become a more well-developed and stronger individual in all aspects if you choose to do that and not become like say a drunk or things that can happen in those fields, which are totally I recognize those issues because I mean it is When my grandpa told me about his stories and how
Mhm.
he wasn't just hanging out in the porch and was running back to see
Yeah,
my
there's a lot of
grandma and get
stories about
married.
how we do things, but there's a lot more of us that are actually like seagoing philosophers, and there are people that just want to drink and do stupid stuff all the time.
Exactly, exactly. So, and I mean, I feel like birds of a feather fly together.
Mhm.
You got a lot of toxic qualities. You're probably gonna find yourself aligning with those individuals, and
Yep.
it makes sense. So, that's why I do feel confident at this point in my life to not be, like that. Or if I am feeling in any way like that's, becoming an issue or may, then, there, like you said, there's resources. And
Yeah.
also I now have the ability to ask for help, which was
Yeah.
something that my pride
Yeah.
and ego
Definitely
would
don't
not.
ever feel like you shouldn't, because yeah, you definitely
Yeah. Yeah.
should.
Yeah.
So last thing I wanted to tell you is like you're talking a lot about like features and benefits. I remember bringing up in recruiting sales calls, but from
Hmm.
an old retired salt's perspective, like those things are all well and good. Like the education for you, education for your
Hmm.
son, that's very
Hmm.
noble, and it's definitely going to happen for you. What I would challenge you is that the biggest benefit you're going to get from service isn't going to be those things. It's
Hmm.
going to be the impact and the relationships that you built and
Hmm.
people that you see do things they never thought they could do because you had a part of it.
Hmm.
And especially as a leader, you're going to get to have direct impact on people's lives. I've had when I had my parents suddenly pass away, and I had a leader that just looked at me straight up. Like I could have been brought up on charges because I missed. I thought I was on leave, but I wasn't. Like
Hmm.
my head was not in the game.
Hmm.
I thought I was still on leave. I returned to work like 3 or 4 days late, so I was
Uh-huh.
completely UA, like AWOL, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and as soon as I realized it, I had a very sick feeling in my stomach because I know
Uh-huh.
what the rule is, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times in the Navy, we say do the right thing, and a lot of times people think that's do what the book says.
Hmm.
Well, this specific leader understood the right thing, and he's like, "Look, come in, we'll take care of it." And
Hmm.
so I came in my uniform, like I'm ready to like fall on my sword because I know what I've done, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And like he just charged me the days of leave, gave me a talking to, made sure I was okay,
Hmm.
um, and we went from there. And it was never an issue. Like he knew that it was a an honest mistake. He knew like what was
Hmm.
going on. He'd been following the whole thing. You don't get that sort of relationship with a lot of people in
Yeah.
the civilian world. Like it's almost like, oh well, you didn't do your job. See ya. You
Hmm.
know, but
Hmm.
here we preserve and we build people,
Hmm.
and you'll be the benefactor of that, but you also have a big part in doing that for people. So
Hmm.
I think if I could keep anything from my time in the Navy, it would be those relationships and being able to experience those. I had two people at my retirement ceremony recently that started off as second classes when I knew them, and in one command they had gone to first class, then chief, and
Hmm.
then got selected to be an officer in the Navy.
Hmm.
And you would think that like you might my younger self would be a little bit butthurt about that. Be like, oh man, like they learned from me. Why are they passing me, right? But
Yeah. Yeah.
I've developed the self awareness to realize that like, hey, that's good for them. Like, and
Hmm.
it only really reflects that I had a part of it. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
that's a
Hmm.
good thing. Like, I don't have any resentment whatsoever. I love the fact that
Hmm.
they're successful and arguably even more successful than I was.
Hmm.
Even though they've still got to find some people to mentor to be better than them. So
Yeah.
got that going for me.
And then I want to echo what Ryan mentioned, right? To me, and we hear this a lot, right? This is a thankless job. And as an officer, you are going to be put into different positions, right? Where you do have to thank everyone else at what they're doing
Hmm.
because they're literally looking up to you
Hmm.
for your guidance, your leadership, and everything. One of the most meaningful moments that I had in my career that I remember was when Ivan Ramirez, one of my friends, we were in Key West. I helped him out as much as I could without no ulterior motive, just kind of give him the ropes. And maybe 6 or 10 years later, we're now stationed in Japan. Fast forward, And he tells me, he's like, Yogi, like, I'm really thankful to you for everything that you did. And I'm like, bro, all I was trying to do was help you out, right?
Mhm.
You did the hard work, you did everything. All I did was give you that shot and that opportunity, right? Because
Mhm.
I was in the position at the time to be able to do it. And but that person saying that to me, like, even till this day, carries more than any paper award, than anything else that I could have ever done, right?
Mhm.
Ivan is about to retire, also from the Navy, very shortly, so I'm really excited to see that, and
Mhm.
see them, move into their next life, and their next chapter of the next story in their life. But it's
Mhm.
just one of those moments, right? And as Ryan mentioned earlier, um, most of my interactions have started with me correcting someone, right? Yeah, and I know that I'm not, or at least in the military, I was not the easiest, right? Because to me, black and white is black and white, right?
Mhm.
And as an AME, we get ingrained to believe that what's written down is literally gonna either kill someone or save somebody's life. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dealing with ejection seats, dealing with the life support systems, like, it literally is
Mhm.
that simple.
Mhm.
Um, and so to me, it's been very, very black and white kind of scenario, even though sometimes it shouldn't have, right?
Mhm.
And that's what Ryan just mentioned about, the leave. With the leave stuff, it's different, right? It's you can have that empathy, you can have that sympathy, and you can
Mhm.
humanize it and say, hey, is this person really doing it because they're lazy, because they wanted to get
Mhm.
over one, or could it possibly be a human mistake?
Mhm.
And I've seen
Mhm.
situations being handled both really great, and
Mhm.
also very simple situations being handled really bad, right?
Mhm.
But what I now know, and one of my best friends, Priscilla Ruiz and Terry Ruiz, also a shout out to them, that Terry Smith and Priscilla now Smith, I forgot, but Priscilla tried to teach me a long time that you get a lot more with honey than with vinegar,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Except I understood it, but I didn't understand it, right? I was like,
Yogi's got like the apple cider vinegar. It's
Yeah, there
I
tough,
you go.
but
do.
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah, yeah,
not
yeah,
honey.
yeah, yeah. You don't quite want to vomit
You
it
could
up,
you
but it's
could
like,
drink it if you wanted
yeah,
to, but it's not
yeah,
great.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But now, in this new phase of life, I'm just like, no one's dying in my watch, right? Nothing that you say and or do is gonna people's feelings are gonna get hurt, but no one's immediately dying.
Mhm.
No one's immediately being put in danger.
Mhm.
So why, like, stress the things that are not really that important, right?
Mhm.
Is someone, if for some reason one of my resolutions didn't pass the General Assembly, even the one that I cared the most about, right? It's not the end of the world. And
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I literally told someone, because I was nervous. I was like, hey man, um, if it doesn't get passed, all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna rewrite it, improve it, and then submit it again next year.
Your
And it is what it
propaganda.
is, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I mean, they passed, right? And they
Yeah,
passed
yeah.
why? Because I was, like, legitimately speaking from the heart.
Mhm.
And whether they did pass or they didn't pass, it didn't matter, because at the end of the
Mhm.
day, I put it all out on the table, and then let's move on, right?
Mhm.
But again, I really do want to emphasize that if you do choose to go in, you have to understand that everything and anything that you now do, you're doing it from a position of power, right?
Mhm.
From a position of influence.
Mhm.
If you choose to be an officer that doesn't wear the or follow the regulations, right? And something as simple but is extremely viewable, right?
Mhm.
Walking around with your hands in your pockets, not
Mhm.
putting your cover on, your
Mhm.
jacket, like, open, right?
Mhm.
Those are things that the junior sailors taking, or whatever branch, they're seeing it, and if you're setting the example, that means that they can do the same thing,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Not only
Yeah.
that,
Um,
but also speaks to your credibility to be able to correct that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
They keep an accountability. They know
Oh
um,
Yeah.
yeah.
what they know
Yeah.
who has what mannerisms.
Yeah.
They and then
So
other things too. Like if you're the guy that like has like a sketchy like personal life when they're off work, they know they see it and they talk about it. And first time you try to correct them, they're like, "Oh, well, I saw you at blah 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 doing this, that, and the other thing." Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
very visible job. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
but I mean, if you the type of dude that just lives your best life as much as you can, and you're open about the fact like whenever you do make a mistake, I think you're going to go like you can't fail in that scenario because people see that and
Mm-hmm.
nobody's there trying to be like uber judgmental or anything, but it's just a
Mm-hmm.
matter of like they want to know that you're a real person and not trying to hold them
Mm-hmm.
to some standard you don't even believe in.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
And
especially
sometimes
too,
when you
like,
don't believe it too, as if you stand for it and you're like, hey man, I really hate this,
yeah.
but it's part of the rules, man, and we just gotta follow
Yeah.
them. They respect
Yeah.
that even more.
then you're really saying like, hey, I believe that it's my job to enforce this. You're not saying I
Mm-hmm.
believe in the rule. I think
Exactly.
that it's a little different. Like you can't take that with everything because I got to know you do stand for something. But
Yeah.
Right.
um, yeah, once in a while, like, hey, look, I get it, but this is what we got to do. No,
Exactly.
respect that.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I think just having that conversation too, opening up in that small sense and not just making like a directive order, or whatever, or
Absolutely.
like
Yeah,
you
the
mentioned,
less
like,
directive orders you can give, the better.
yeah,
But you're going to
yeah,
have to eventually.
yeah, exactly,
But
exactly.
especially if you can build up that rapport by not giving directive
Hmm.
orders, and then
Hmm.
when you do, they will listen because they're like, "Hey, this guy doesn't just order us around. This guy gives us like he respects me as a person when he can.
Exactly.
And then if he's telling me something is an order, then I know there's probably a good reason."
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I think you mentioned a good thing too, Ryan, was that, like, I was mentioning kind of the big wins, the end of the day, like, oh, providing
Yeah,
schooling for myself, for my son, yada yada, and that's cool and all. But it's like, what were the little wins during your day? And I think
yeah,
that something that you struggle with in like the civilian life is that you have that distinct personal life and the work life, where your work friends, like you have a work girlfriend or whatever the sense, what I mean, it's a whole,
yeah,
and a wife at home, but like. You
yeah,
know, like more leery, but like there's just that stark difference between here and there. But like if you're in the service and you're on duty, like it is all in one, like your personal life, your like you even mentioned, like if you're doing unscrupulous things, people are going to notice. And I'm sure plenty of those individuals had the dad or mom that was an alcoholic, or doing whatever, or you know just
yeah.
getting into trouble
Yeah,
all the
we
time.
notice
So
everything. It's just a
yeah.
question of when do we want to try and call it in?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, yeah, I think it does give the opportunity to be authentic and to build authentic relationships, because that's what I've learned is that, like,
Yeah,
we don't accomplish anything alone. And, the fact that, like, say if I, was able to become an active member as an officer, then, I take the experiences I had. And which also takes the mistakes that I've had. And,
yeah,
I help other people not hopefully make those same mistakes, or if they're in that realm,
yeah.
then I'm got a compassionate ear. So
Garrett, I love your attitude. I hope you
thanks.
decide to join, and I hope that you make the most of it. And yeah, I think you're on the right track, dude. Um,
Thanks.
you're definitely on the right track. Just don't stop listening.
Yes, yes, thank you, Ryan.
Yeah,
Well, with that, gentlemen, I think it should be in our best interest to like wrap this thing up and then leave more suspense for the later future of whether or not you choose to join, and if so, what branch and the why behind it, and or not whether or not you choose to go to the reserves of active duty, because that's also a
Hmm.
really big decision.
Hmm.
Uh, Big old shout out to Tiburcio, BJ Trevino, and Eddie Thompson, who just started watching us. And so Eddie Thompson is one of my greatest friends. He was also in Japan. He's currently here in San Diego visiting for another retirement that is going to be happening today in about an hour and a half for another one of our brothers and sisters, or brothers, hopefully. Uh, Maybe not a sister. I don't know. Non-binary nowadays.
you guys are in
Um,
California, so it's a little bit more gray area there.
Yeah, yeah,
That's what
yeah.
I say. You know, whatever. You know, no
Yeah, yeah.
judgment.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
Uh,
yourself, dude.
yeah.
Yeah.
So no, but in all seriousness, thank you for joining us. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be able to share your story and some of your thoughts. And for anyone, uh, he says Eddie Thompson says he acts like a woman sometimes. See, there you go, boom, non-binary, no comments.
So do I, Yogi. But
Yeah.
So no, but in all seriousness, we want to follow your journey. We want to see how this turns out and what we do,
Hmm.
because it allows the sailors, airmen, Marines, Army, and the reserves to be able to see and follow a story right from the beginning to an end,
Hmm.
and put that human interaction face to it, because we're not just a number. We're not just we're still human beings that have and live through different things in our lives that
Hmm.
allows us to move forward. So thanks. Any last parting words, questions that you got, Garrett?
No, I'm super thankful to have this opportunity to be here. It's been enlightening for me as well, and I really appreciate to keep all of you updated on my journey, and I appreciate the support. It really, without having met you at the SS Triple C, like it wouldn't be embodying what it is currently, and I am really excited. Like I'm excited to move forward and to have some, uh, there's a lot of hopefulness here. So thank you for having me.
And no, and I wanna tell you thank you for being a part of and getting involved with the Veteran Caucus,
Hmm.
right? So for everyone that doesn't know, the Veteran Caucus is the representation for all community colleges across the state of California, and we're able to bring everyone together and be their voice and represent our veterans. Whether you're a veteran, an ally, a family member, Gold Star member, active duty service member, or just want to participate, let us know. Reach out. We want to be able to be here to support our families and friends. Ryan, any last parting words, my brother?
no, Garrett, good luck. Just remember, if you need anything, look me up on LinkedIn. Get my number from Yogi. Yogi, don't
I
post
will.
comments.
Oh, I'm about to put it on the comments, bro. Blast it all out.
That's where I give you my brand from.
All right. With that, thank you everyone for joining us. Um, please reach out to Garrett. Please reach out to Ryan. And any questions, comments, concerns that come along the way, Garrett, we're here for you, my brother.
I appreciate it. Thank you guys. Take care.
All right.